Guys, today I'm gonna take a look at the new banners coming up in the first Nathan patch, and I'm gonna talk about the poll value of each of the featured 5 stars, so I can help you with your decisions. Let's go. So, first phase is gonna have Kazuha and Mualani. I'm gonna start by talking about Kazuha because it's been such a staple in the meta ever since he came out. The cool thing about Kazuha is that he's very plug and play. You pick any team with elements that can be sword, put Kazuha in it, and he will have a significant impact even if you don't really know what you're doing with him, just by virtue of how powerful the buffs and utility brings to the table are. Truthfully, it's more about the utility with Kazuha, because in terms of damage support, there are many other units that can kind of match him in some situations. The Sucrose comparison is obvious and was a huge talking point back in the day, with Sucrose being able to match him or even surpass him on teams that benefited from Elemental Mastery. There are also other cases now though, like Fiorina, Zhongli on teams where you can use Petra, Xianyun on Plunge teams if you're looking at something more atypical. Compared to these, in terms of buffing alone, Kazuha kind of looks human, if we're being honest, but truthfully, it's the damage and utility brings to the table that actually sets him apart from most of these units and still makes him arguably the best pull in the game in my opinion. His grouping effects are still unmatched in flexibility. Units like Venti have stronger grouping in a vacuum, but Kazuha has stronger pull strength and it's tied to an elemental skill with low cooldown, meaning he can group more units and more often. And this is also the big difference between Kazuha and Sucrose. Like, while Sucrose has kind of wonky, awkward grouping due to the targeting of the elemental skill and burst, Kazuha is much more consistent. It's not only this, however, because Kazuha also has stronger impact when it comes to applying elements through his elemental burst, so if it's better on teams that need that extra bump from him. Also, his damage is just better, both if you're talking about raw damage on crit builds or elemental mastery tied damage as well, since he can generate more swords. Long story short, while in a lot of cases the raw theory crafting numbers might kind of undersell Kazuha in a way, there are plenty of intangibles in the actual game that often make him look much better than what the numbers do. He has one flaw though, which is mostly tied to how the Viridistant Veneer set works. This set allows him to reduce the resistance of the elements he's worse, but it only applies if he's worse them while on field, which by itself is kind of a noticeable detriment compared to more modern resistance reduction methods like the Deep Food set and Chevreuse. Additionally, it becomes kind of tricky to take advantage of this set if you have to sword more than one element, so the double sword setups. Some teams like Freeze and Electrocharge are pretty trivial in functionality, but things like Vape teams can be rather trial and error if you want to sword both Hydro and Pyro, and others like Melt can be borderline impossible if you want to sword both Pyro and Cryo. In this regard, it's rumored that we will get a universal resistance reduction support in Shilona next patch, and the role might be to fill Kazuha's gaps, kind of. So it's definitely something to keep in mind if you want to pull Kazuha for the teams where he works worse in, kind of. Lastly, a bit about his constellations, since he's on a rerun and I imagine many people could be interested in them. They're fine overall, but kind of less valuable compared to more recent constellations and units. The Constellation 1 gives you an extra elemental skill charge, which adds both damage and flexibility, but it's pretty situational in usefulness in my opinion. Constellation 2 is a more consistent buff technically, since it makes his burst give 200 elemental mastery to both Kazuha and the active character. This results in a very solid buff for all the teams that can benefit from elemental mastery, which is mostly the Vape or Melt teams. However, compared to Constellation 2s like Nahidas or Fiorinas, it definitely feels worse both in terms of damage increase and versatility. So, these constellations are nice buffs for his kit, but not game-changing by any means. Next up, Mualani. I already made a guide on her a few days ago, but in this video we'll elaborate more on her pull value. Just to contextualize, she's a Hydro main DPS and she thrives on Vape teams specifically, and the reason is that she has very low frequency of attacks, which allows her to vape every hit even without having a crazy high pyro application on the team. The difference in her damage between Vape teams and other types of teams is huge, so if you pull for her, you kinda have to accept that she needs to be on these teams to be great. However, the good news is that her personal damage is so good here that even without particularly contested supports, she can do very well. In this regard, she's an HP scaling unit, which means she won't fit well with Bennett. The absence of Bennett on her teams also penalizes Xianling, both in terms of damage she can dish out and their energy requirement. For this reason, she won't be the easiest character to slot into her teams. This is not an unsolvable issue, however, because units like Deia, Xinyan, Toma can still be used in her teams and provide enough application for her to work well, while also providing plenty of defensive support. This is Mualani's true strength at the moment, the way I see it. She can integrate on her teams these unusual, kind of underrated supports, but still perform at a similar level as other DPS do with way better supports. I have no doubt that as more Natal units come out, she'll have more established teams, maybe featuring the Pyro Archon as their best support, but as things are now, she's already a pretty good unit, by virtue of being a character that can be strong while using uncontested units on her team. If you're somebody that doesn't have many units and doesn't have at least 2 established teams on your account, I think Mualani could legitimately be a great addition to your box, as she can make a lot out of barely anything. Meanwhile, if you're a seasoned player that has followed the meta throughout the past few years, then it becomes trickier because her current ceiling isn't on the level as somebody like Nuvolette or Arlecchino, but the thing is, I can see it getting that hike potentially if she gets more fitting supports. Now, moving to the second phase banners, it's gonna feature Raiden and Kinich. But first, let me remind you that if you enjoy my channel but you haven't subbed yet, please consider doing so because it really makes me notice your support. I will start with Kinich since I haven't talked about him in the past few weeks. He looks like he could be a pretty strong DPS, but with a few caveats that need to be taken in consideration. First of all, he's only really good on Burgeon and Burning teams, because his kit benefits from those reactions specifically, and also because he has very high attack scalings that benefit more from raw buffs rather than something like quick and reaction procs. Specifically, he's pretty much glued to Bennett at the moment. Pyro units can obviously be integrated rather seamlessly into his teams, and this means that the Bennett-Shenling combination is a no-brainer when it comes to what his best possible compositions are. These compositions look pretty strong in terms of damage ceiling, even at free-to-play investment, but the thing is, it's a lot of Fiorina, Bennett, and so on, characters that are highly contested. His other arguable best team would be Emily, the Burning sub-DPS, which is good and all, but considering Emily came out just this patch, I assume many of you that want Kinich don't also have her. His weaker teams still look decent, but just much less impressive comparatively, of course. Honestly though, if we just look at the numbers, it doesn't really look worse than Mualani. He's actually pretty competitive with her, if not better, and yeah, in terms of pure calculations, his teams do look better than Mualani's, but I'm not too excited about that because I don't really like some of his gameplay stuff. What I mean is that when he wants to attack, he locks into an opponent with his hook and spins around him while shooting stuff at him specifically. Pretty much all of these shots have small range, and this is an issue for a Dendro DPS that won't be able to integrate anemo groupers into his teams. This puts him more in contention with other great single target DPS we have, like Huta for example, rather than units like Mualani, Arlecchino, Nuvolette, so units that can be also great in AoE. In this context, this still looks nice to me, I would say, but probably not incredibly exciting, because of the practical issues single target DPS can have in Genshin, especially the ones that can't use Kazuha. So in theory, he can be a nice pull, I would say, but I need to see more of him before I can decisively say that. Last but not least, Raiden. I will keep it a buck. Raiden is definitely a character that has aged quite a bit since release. She came in as a character with insane quality of life and utility, with a place in some of the best teams in the game and a DPS potential that was already nice at Constellation 0 but became monstrous at Constellation 2. Nowadays, however, her team ceiling is certainly looking more average and her damage kind of pales in comparison to the top tier DPS, although she can still dish it out nice at Constellation 2 and above. Still, she's a pretty good unit. Like, the thing with Raiden is that she makes things very comfy. She might not hit the hardest and their teams might not be the best, but their quality of life partially makes up for it. Full interruption resistance, energy refund effects, really nice auto-tracking attacks, she just provides everything you need for your team to be consistent. The bottom line is that while she's been surpassed by many other teams and characters in terms of damage, her teams still have enough firepower that they can clear the abyss, and with Raiden at helm, this average to above average damage output becomes very foolproof. Nowadays, she works best when paired with strong sub DPS like Fiorina, Yelan, Shenling Steel, units that have pretty high energy requirements Raiden can take care of, while also driving them efficiently by being a full interruption resistance main carry. In that sense, she's still a relatively nice pull, although this might matter more for beginners or players that haven't played for that long in general rather than for veterans that might not find much use for her in their accounts. At Constellation 2, she's definitely stronger meta-wise, but the thing is, that's a lot of pulls for a level of performance that can sort of be matched by many strong Constellation 0 DPS nowadays. I would only suggest you to go for Constellation 2 if you really like Raiden, and this is coming from someone that has her at Constellation 4, so yeah. To end this video, I would say that the one with the highest pull value between these four is probably Kazuha, yeah. Definitely, actually, because it's such a versatile and game-changing support. Then Mualani, and then either Kinich or Raiden, depending on your specific account situation. Kinich will probably be better for you if you have an established account, while Raiden can maybe help you more if you're sort of a beginner or haven't played for that long in general. And with this, I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and also go check the Mualani guide I made a few days ago. Bye bye!